When On Her Majesty's Secret Service was released, it marked something of a turning point for the franchise because it was a considerable risk. Up until this point, the franchise had been considered made of Teflon. With Sean Connery in the role, it seemed like the sky was the limit. But this was the first time the producers considered making a film without Connery, who by this point had walked away from the role, seemingly forever. On Her Majesty's Secret Service then would be an ultimate test. Could James Bond survive without Sean Connery? And with a new and largely untested name, George Lazenby? Well, unsurprisingly, we know thanks to history that the answer is yes. Now, it seems popular in hindsight to malign George Lazenby's performance and his tenure in the role since he only did the one film. However, the film was actually still successful, albeit not quite as successful as the previous Sean Connery films. And he was invited back to do more, but he turned it down. But Lazenby wasn't the only reoccurring character to get a bit of a makeover and a change of actor, because we also saw a change in Blofeld. In the previous entry we had Donald Pleasence play the role, but now they recruited Telly Savalas to take the role on instead. And this would go on to be a reoccurring theme in the Bond franchise, where Blofeld would return, but every single time is played by a completely different actor, and each time usually without any kind of comment. And so today I'm going to be taking a look at the Sideshow Collectibles Blofeld figure, who to this day is the only version of Blofeld we have in figure form at all. The front of the packaging utilises one of the film posters for the film. In my opinion, it's one of the more dull, less inspiring posters. But nevertheless, I do think this is a fantastic idea, and I love that Sideshow Collectibles did this for each of their figures. The packaging does have that window display with the gatefold cover, so when you open it up, you have the credits of the film and a little bit of bio about the film itself, which is fantastic. And of course, on the right hand side, we can see the figure in all his glory. And on the reverse, we have a bit more information about the film, together with some production stills and advertising both the figure that we've got in our hands, but also the accompanying Bond as well. Out of the packaging, we can see the figure is very nicely presented, the tailoring is really well constructed and fits in very, very neatly. The costume itself is a little drab, obviously being very brown-centric, but it does look pretty screen accurate. And speaking of accuracy, I have to say this is probably one of the best head sculpts in this entire line, because I think they've really nailed Telly Savalas' likeness here. The sculpt is absolutely magnificent. Although the design is quite basic, like I said, the tailoring itself is quite nice, and you can see little details here such as the belt buckle and the belt going through the hoop. That looks really nice, and some of these accessories like the gun holster and the binocular case fit on perfectly without any danger of them coming loose, which is really nice. You can see he's got the short trousers and the long pull-up socks there, which is a nice touch, and these fit very nicely into the boots. The only criticism I'd say about the boots is they could have done with maybe a bit more paint application here, maybe something in the laces just to distinguish them, because they do look a bit rubberized and a bit action-man-y. So in terms of accessories, he does come with quite a lot. So aside from his gun holster and his binocular case, he also has a pair of yellow goggles, a pair of binoculars, 2 grenades, a rocket launcher I think it is, and a pistol. The goggles fit absolutely perfectly, and although they do look a little bit silly, they are pretty much screen accurate there, so I think that's pretty decent. The rocket launcher itself is a little bit of a strange design, and yeah, I'm not quite sure what he's supposed to do with this really. The binoculars are actually surprisingly effective. I was a little bit skeptical, but they fit into his hand beautifully because of course he does have those rubber Sideshow Collectible hands, which are great. So they're stiff, they're hard enough to hold things and really grip them, but they have those individual rubber fingers there that allow you to sort of manipulate them a little bit to squeeze things in, and they look fantastic. And likewise, he holds his pistol there absolutely perfectly, with, of course, the trigger finger resting on the trigger, which just looks glorious. Now, I have to say, with the gun, it's a little bit disappointing in a way, because I've seen other Sideshow Collectible figures where the gun actually comes apart, where you can pull the barrel back or you can pull the clip out, and that isn't the case here. But its overall presentation is still pretty decent. And likewise, he holds the grenade perfectly well. I'm not quite sure why they're giving him 2, that seems a little bit like overkill to me, but nevertheless, it is very nicely sculpted, and when you put him in a pose like this, looks pretty effective. And the holster is made of a very thin leather or leather effect material, which fits perfectly nicely onto his belt, and you can slide his gun into the holster very easily there. There is a little clip to hold it in place, but it's a little bit fiddly. So there you have it, there is Blofeld in all his glory, and I have to say I think this is a really, really strong entry in the series. I think the likeness is fantastic, I think he comes with a ton of accessories which is really cool, and yeah, I think it's pretty screen accurate, and I think they've done a really nice job. He's definitely one of my favourites in this line, and thankfully we do have a Blofeld in the collection. I would love to have had a Donald Pleasence, but sadly that wasn't the case, he was never released. I do have great affection for this line, and some of the sculpts can be hit or miss, but here we have a really solid entry. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.